will appear with David Gregory on Meet the Press this Sunday. Joining me now for Friday's Gaggle, roll call reporter Shira Toeplitz, Democratic pollster Fred Yang, and Sarah Taylor Fagan, CNBC contributor and a political director in the George W. Bush White House. Thank you all. Let's start. That was not just as a Connecticut native, but as a father, and that was a somber and difficult to watch in a way moment. Is it a tipping point, Sarah? Because we've been through events similar to this before with gun violence and talk on politicians on both sides that now is the time, we need to do something. Do we do something? Because as Mike points out, the NRA isn't likely to say, okay, assault weapons ban, that sounds fine. High ammunition clips. Is this a moment, or is this just one of the many times we've seen in the past? Well, I think
the sight of little caskets makes this a different moment than Colorado or Columbine. That said, on all the major publications in this country over the week, you have seen study after study from universities like UCLA to Harvard, not exactly bastions of conservatism, that point out that these assault weapons bans, gun control, does not solve the problem. This is not just an issue of the NRA and where the NRA sits on issues. You know, gun crime is down. Violent crime is down. These mass shootings are up. So what is the X factor here? Is it the guns, or is it something else?
And I would add,
and there's strong evidence that points to something else.
I would add, all three guns used in the shooting purchased legally. Connecticut has some of the most strict gun laws in the country. Fred, you've polled for many years on this and many other topics. The numbers on gun control broadly, not speaking in the last 2 weeks, but broadly suggest the country would prefer less strictures rather than more strictures, to enforce what we have or less rather than more. Are we going to see those numbers change? We've seen them change a little bit. Is this a kind of upward trend or not?
I don't know. I think the jury's still out on this, Chris. And I think in terms of this, is this a tipping point moment? I mean, it is, but it all depends on what the it is. Is it a tipping point moment where the Congress and the President move in one direction? Is it a tipping point moment for the NRA in terms of its image with the public? I mean, as Sarah said, the images from last week and this week are indelibly imprinted. And then I don't think we know what kind of tipping point this is.
Now, I want to shift gears with the recognition that it's almost impossible to shift gears from that topic, but I do want to talk about what is an amazing political story, just in terms of the drama of politics, Shira. Last night, John Boehner, 24 hours after saying, we're going to pass this and we're going to put it to the president, they can't even bring the bill on his proposal, this Plan B proposal on the fiscal cliff, they can't even bring it up. How much does it say about the Republican? Let's just limit it to House Republicans. Is this an inmates controlling the asylum? Does John Boehner have control of his group of Republicans or not?
Well, not on this issue and not on this bill, obviously. He didn't have the votes to bring it to the floor to pass. It's a problem, but you know, this has been something that's been going on for at least a cycle now with his caucus. He's had a lot of trouble controlling it. This is not a new thing, and this is not, frankly, his first fairly humiliating defeat in this kind of thing right before Christmas, might I add.
And Sarah, just from your perspective, what can you do? Is this a changed Republican Party from 5 years or 10 years ago, where if the Republican Speaker of the House said, we're going to pass this, you may not all love it, but I'm the Speaker and we need this, would it have gotten done 5 or 10 years ago? Take Boehner out of the equation. Let's talk about the Republican Party in general.
5 years ago, I think it would have gotten done. Where leadership used to be able to. Well, we have a more conservative Republican caucus, and you know, I think that this was a situation where maybe Boehner erred a little bit in not putting a huge spending reduction in that package that would have allowed some additional members to be comfortable enough to get it over the finish line. And so, you know, the problem with this debate is we're really still talking relatively small ball on both sides. 1-to-1 revenue, you know, 0.8 to 1 revenue cuts. It's not going to fix the problem, and that's why Republicans aren't going to take the hit on this.
One other thing that I'd note is it doesn't, you know, the last 48 hours notwithstanding, it doesn't feel like we're details-wise all that far apart either.
And here's the irony for Republicans who voted or rebuked Boehner last night is we're going to have a worse deal. Republicans should have voted for this. They would have ended up with tax increases on people making over $500 or $600, a better deal than what we're going to end up with.
Fred, we overlook President Obama in all of this, but what does
I think he's happy to be overlooked right now.
But what is, on a serious front, what does he do? Because now there isn't really a Republican, there is no Republican leader to deal with. How does he craft, I mean, I guess Mitch McConnell, but how does he craft a deal?
You know,
because Republicans in the House still have to vote for something for it to become law. I mean, that's what we all forget. He can talk to Harry Reid all he wants, but...
No, politically, it's good for Democrats, for the country. I mean, we got to get something done.
Okay, we'll be right back. But before we go, trivia time.